Hey guys, this is Gloria Wood with another self love conversation. And tonight we have such a wonderful guest that I know you ladies are going to enjoy. We just did a actual blog post on her, and she has been talking about the idea of poverty and how it's not just something financial. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to read a little bit of the blog post that was written, and then I'm gonna let her get into her story because everybody knows that is Mental Health Awareness Month, right? And what we're trying to focus on here at the I'm Loving Me project is just to get you to understand and change your mind about some things in your life, especially as it relates to trauma. Some of you guys don't even know if you experienced any trauma or anything. So I have Miss Tammy Thompson here, Halima Tammy Thompson, excuse me, and I am going to let her really just dive in about the idea of trauma, dive in about the idea of poverty, and really, really, really drop some nuggets on you guys. I want to make sure that everybody get the opportunity to uh, ask any questions that you like. I will be reading the comments so that we will be able to go ahead and get those questions answered. Now, listen to this, guys. Halima Tammy Thompson turned her life around completely from homelessness, a childhood in foster care, teen pregnancy, and poverty. And it is so amazing how this woman transformed her life. Now, ladies, she has a speaking business, she has a media company, and she's raising awareness about the psychology of poverty. Halima, thank you so much for being here. And I can't wait. I'm going to be a student tonight because I really, really,
Right.
really want to know this story. I really want to know your journey as to how you got from homelessness to poverty to teen pregnancy to now being a business owner, not of one, but two businesses, and what that journey was like. So go ahead, I'm ready.
Well, thank you so much. I am so excited to be speaking to you and your followers and your listeners. And I really appreciate having the platform to tell the story because it's so important that we are being transparent
Right.
and sharing with other people our journeys because we don't know who is going to benefit from hearing what we went through and how we made it through.
Exactly.
And, I know particularly around the subject of poverty, there's a lot of shame and guilt and stigma associated with that. And so a
Mhm.
lot of us are keeping our stories to ourselves because of fear of judgment.
Mhm.
And, I have to admit, I spent the majority of my life thinking the exact same thing. We can't tell people. And as an African American woman, being raised by an African American woman, we were taught that there were just certain things that you
That
just
we
didn't
don't
tell
talk
people.
about. Right.
My business is my business, and you just keep it to yourself. But growing up and becoming an adult, I realized that keeping a lot of this stuff to ourselves is actually killing us.
Right.
You know, literally and figuratively, it's killing us. It's killing our
Right.
spirits, and it is in a lot of cases, people are actually dying from trying to hold and carry these burdens and carry all this pain on our own. So the journey has been long, right?
Yeah.
And I have to admit that I am still on that journey.
Mm.
Every single day, the journey continues. And I think we should be looking at it from a perspective of we are always on the journey. We're on the journey until the day we die. We should be,
Right.
right? Because we always want to be striving to be better and to continue to heal. So, yeah, I was born into generational poverty. I was born into a family that had been struggling to survive and working really hard and doing all the things that we say that we're supposed to do when we have a
Mhm.
family. And even though, I was born in a two-parent household, my parents were married uh, in a little town called Bluefield, West Virginia.
Bluefield.
Little
Okay.
Bluefield, right?
Where's
Little
that at?
Yeah, little coal mining town, very, very southern tip of West Virginia.
Okay.
And and my daddy worked really, really hard in the coal mines, hard, dangerous work. But it just wasn't enough. You know, it just wasn't enough. No matter what he did and how hard he worked, it just wasn't enough to take us out of poverty. And so my dad had a cousin who lived in Pittsburgh, which is where I am right now.
Right.
Uh, and he told him, if you can get here, I can get you a job here in the steel mills. And back then in the 70s, the 70s, that was good blue collar work. You could
Right.
take care of a family working in the steel mills.
Hmm.
And so that's what he did. He packed up the car with me, my brother, and my mom, and everything that would fit in a car and a dog.
Mm.
And we drove from Bluefield, West Virginia to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And, I was 9 or 10 years old. And to us, that was an adventure. It was
Hmm.
an
Hmm.
adventure drive. We didn't know that. I didn't have a clue what was really going on, didn't understand that my dad was running for his life. He was
Wow.
running towards his manhood from his
Right.
perspective.
Hmm.
Because when we lived in West Virginia, we lived with my mother's mother, my grandmother.
Wow.
And,
Uh-huh.
for a kid, who doesn't want to live with their grandma? Grandma,
Right.
everybody,
Granny takes care of you. She love you. She give
right.
you all the kisses and give you stuff that the parents won't give you.
Yes. But as a grown man living with his mother in law,
It
not
ain't
so
gonna
good,
work. Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
We drove here to Pittsburgh, and the same day that we arrived here, we ended up homeless
Whoa.
because Dad found out that job that his cousin promised him wasn't here. There was no job,
What?
and uh, the plan was to get to Pittsburgh, and we were going to stay with the cousin until my dad and mom could get on their feet. But
Right.
when that job wasn't here, my dad wasn't having it. He said, "We'll figure it out." And we ended up, living in a car in downtown Pittsburgh
Mm.
for what turned out to be between, 3 weeks to a month living in this car parked downtown Pittsburgh while my dad and my mom went and took turns looking for work. They'd take turns. One would stay with us and the other would go out hunting for work. And unfortunately, one day when my dad was out hunting for work, the police came and
Mm.
ended up taking me and my brother away because apparently living in a car is not was
Not
hot in
legal.
Pittsburgh.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So we ended up living in a group home. Um, for a while until my parents could get it together and find housing and get jobs. And I can tell you, when now I'm a studier of trauma. I study trauma. I use it in the work that I do. And I can tell you that being snatched out of your mother's arms in a very strange city and not knowing where you were going to end up was definitely the beginning of a very traumatic. That's when I really started to
Oh
get,
yeah.
and those are things that you just don't forget,
Yeah. I had
Uh,
a friend of mine who said that, he remembers being when his mom left. He knew
hmm
that it was a
hmm
traumatic experience because now that he's 60 years old, he still remembers what he wore that day,
yes, and
all
that's
the way down
exactly.
to the shoes.
Yep. And so what I remember really clearly was the woman who was the CPS worker. I
Hmm.
remember exactly what she looked like. I remembered her ponytail. I remembered her eye color. I remembered everything. And the one thing that I will never forget is hearing my mother scream.
Wow.
And, the look in her eyes, the sheer terror of having her children snatched out of her arm, and there was nothing that she could do about it.
Right.
And so those are the things, that I remember. That the thing that I remember most about that is losing my security. Right,
Mm.
when things like that happen, it's really hard to feel secure in anything
Right.
after that. Um, and so we went to this group home, and it was a type of space that where they treated children who were involved in the criminal juvenile justice system exactly the same as the kids who were there at no fault of their own through being taken away from their parents.
Right.
And that was something that I remember too. Is a bunch of hurt babies, a bunch
Hmm.
of hurt children. That little saying about hurt people hurting people. That's real.
Right.
Um, these kids didn't know me for 5 minutes, and they tortured me. I was bullied and had no idea why. I couldn't figure out why they hated me. I had been there for 5 minutes,
Right.
right? So eventually, my mother and father were able to get us back, but our family just was never the same after that. My
I was
mother
gonna ask, how was the reuniting after that? Did you have any type of animosity with your mom or dad, or felt like they didn't work hard enough, or
never felt that. I never
okay,
felt that. I was so happy to be back,
back?
but my mother did. Uh,
Wow.
my mother and father divorced probably a year after that.
Mm-hmm.
She did not forgive. She just couldn't bring. She blamed him
Mm.
for bringing her to this strange city in a place where she didn't know anybody, and basically, from her perspective, getting her children taken away from her. And so
Did
she
they
just
go
couldn't.
back home, or did they stay and just
No,
kept
we
looking?
ended, yeah, we ended up staying in Pittsburgh.
Okay.
My mother and father divorced about a year later, and I didn't see my father again until I was 22 years old, 23 years old. Went looking for him. He left,
Um,
and he didn't look back. And what I remember now, and I had a lot of animosity towards my father
of course.
about that, right? But as an adult, and again, somebody who is really trying to understand how trauma impacts our decision making and how we view ourselves, I realized that he left and probably couldn't look back because of the guilt that he
Right.
felt
Right.
for not being able to protect his family and support his family. So, I eventually forgave him. I'm going to say I kind of forgave him. We still
Mhm.
struggle. And, one thing about healing, when you're working on healing, you got to be honest with yourself. Um,
Absolutely.
so I wouldn't be completely honest if I said I completely forgive him because he's made a lot of mistakes. Um, but I get it. I get where he's coming from.
Hmm.
So but him leaving because I was a really major daddy's girl growing up.
Yeah.
I was a big old daddy's girl, and him leaving shaped me as a woman.
Mm.
It shaped every relationship that I ever had after. It shaped my ability to trust and believe that people would be there when you
Yeah.
needed them to be.
Exactly.
Um, and in some ways, I blame myself for our family breaking up. Which I think a lot of children go through.
Yeah, and can you explain that? Because that's like that's something that's so common, which some people don't understand. It's like the kids blame themselves
Yeah.
for the breaking up or the divorce. So what
Hmm.
exactly is the feeling for that? Like as a kid, what was it that you was feeling?
Well, I think children are unable to compartmentalize emotions. We believe that we are at the epicenter of our parents'
Yeah.
everything. Everything that happens to our parents is revolves around us.
True.
So, when you hear your parents arguing and the core of their argument from my mother's perspective was it was your fault that my children got taken away.
Mm-hmm.
We
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be in this position
If it
if it
wasn't
weren't
for
for
you.
you. From a child's perspective, all I can hear is she's mad at him because of us.
Uh,
And so, as an adult, I learned it was a lot more complicated and a lot
right.
more layered than that because their marriage wasn't the best before we got to Pittsburgh. But
Right.
how I didn't realize that.
Uh-huh.
But it did. It shaped that shaped my how I felt about myself. It shaped how I interacted with men in relationships. Um, I ended up having a set of twins at 17 years old
Wow.
because the first guy that came along and told me he loved me, boy, that was it. That was it. That's all I had been searching for. Right, was the
Yeah.
love of a man.
Yeah.
And so It's just so happens, when we think about it as women, when we get in negative relationships, a lot of times we end up getting in relationships with people who are just like the people that originally hurt us, and I know
That's
it's not,
so true.
it's something,
So true.
so I started realizing that I was seeking out people who I knew wouldn't stay, right? And
Mm.
so I was
Mm.
looking for people who wouldn't stay because I
Yeah.
understood that I could prepare myself for that. And so by the time I was 22 years old, I had 5 children. Five
Wow.
kids, 22 years old, living in poverty, literally hating myself, hating everything about myself. Um, and being in poverty did not help that, right? Because there was a lot of guilt
Of course.
associated with the fact that I'm bringing these babies into the world that I really can't take care of,
Right.
that I can't take care of financially or emotionally. I wasn't emotionally equipped to be anybody's mother.
Right.
Um, but there I was, and when I first got pregnant with the twins, my mother, I remember her telling me practically every day, you've ruined your life. Your life is over.
No.
Your life is over.
Only because of her hurt, right?
Yeah,
Like she was,
she was hurt,
yeah,
and
yeah,
she had very high expectations for me.
of course.
And according to her, I failed her. I disappointed her. But
Mm.
when your mother tells you that this is it and you have ruined your life, you believe it.
Yes, you do.
And you believe the dirty looks when you're walking, around, and you got all these babies and everybody's looking at you and the judgment, and you know what that feels like if you've been there. The dirty looks and the judgment. People don't even have to say anything. You know what they're
Correct.
thinking, right? And
Hmm.
so I had gotten into this space where I literally believed that this was it for me. This was it. This was all I was ever going to be. I was going to be on welfare for the rest of my life. And that was that.
Mm.
And so eventually I started selling drugs. And,
No, Halima,
and
for real?
yes, honey, I was in the streets deep,
Wow,
right? I was in the
wow.
streets because I felt like that was it. That was
Yeah,
all I had. There was
ooh,
no way that I was going to go. I was supposed to go to college. I was
yeah.
supposed. Everybody had all these expectations for me, and I failed everybody.
Hmm.
And but I ended up, in the streets and what Pittsburgh would call a gang. We never considered it a gang,
Uh-huh.
but for me, that was my family. That was my acceptance. Those were the people that believed in me,
Correct.
and always told me I was good at what I did.
Okay,
So
good. They gave you that encouragement, that reinforcement that you
yeah,
need.
that's right. But I had one friend in particular who would tell me on a regular basis that I was not doing what I was supposed to be doing. This is not where you are supposed to be. You don't belong here, she would tell me on a regular basis. And she was the friend who, everybody's got either somebody in their family or a friend who has dreams that you pay attention to, right? Because
Absolutely.
y'all know what I'm talking about. So like somebody's always got one of those in their circle.
Always.
They tell
Always.
you they had a dream, their dreams happen,
Right.
right? So she was the person that you didn't want calling you saying, "Hey, I had a dream about you," unless it
Yeah.
was something good, right? Uh, one day yeah, she was that person. And so one morning she did. She called me and she told me, she was crying, hysterically crying, telling me that she had a dream about me. And
Mm.
I was terrified.
Mm.
Um, and her dream, she was telling me, "You're going to go to jail and you need to stop right now. You need to get it together. I need you to get up, go register for school, go do something. You got to do something different."
Right.
And I don't want to hear that. I don't want to
Right.
hear that. Like, okay, all right, I'll go later. And she's like, "No, right now, you got to go."
Mm.
And I think we ended up on staying on the phone for close to 2 hours,
Okay.
and she wouldn't hang up because she was adamant that I needed to get up and go do what she's telling me to do.
True
And
friend.
I did.
Good.
Yeah, and I got up and I went and I got on a bus and I went downtown and I registered for school.
Oh man, that is
And
amazing.
yeah, and on the way home, I got a call that my house was being raided by the police.
What?
Yes, this is all in the same day. It was I'm
You
freaking
are kidding.
not. And so, they came in and they found what they
Look
found.
at
And
God,
look at God,
boy.
right? This is God. This is Him all day long. And so I did. I ended up getting arrested. And, in Pennsylvania back then, this was almost 25 years ago, uh,
Yeah.
there was a mandatory minimum sentence, that you had to serve if a certain amount of drugs were on your possession. And I went and talked to an attorney, and they said you what they found does fall within this minimum sentence, and you are going to have to go to jail for a minimum of 18 months. And in this time, so the if you're not familiar with the court process, the adjudication process in some cases can take up to a year before you finally go in front of a judge. And in this time, I'm registered for school, so I'm going right. I'm going to school, and
Uh-huh.
I get a job, and I have completely moved away from the space that I was in, and I'm literally working on getting my life together.
Yeah.
But this thing is hanging over my head,
Hanging over
that
your
I,
head. Yes, ma'am. I do know. I
and so the day that I went to court, I had already been warned that that day I was going to be taken away and that I was going to go serve this time.
mm-mm.
And I have babies. I have 5 babies, all under the age of 6.
Yeah.
Um, and my friend, the same friend, we had made an agreement. She was going to take custody of these babies while I was in jail. And we were prepared for that, and we went to court that day. And Judge Little sat on the
Listen.
bench, and he looked in his file, and he had this file, and he was reading it, and he was looking over his glasses, and he's looking at me. We're the only ones in the courtroom.
Yeah.
And he calls the court to order at 9 o'clock on the dot. And the district attorney is asking him if he can hold off a minute because his witnesses are not there.
Mm.
And the judge said, absolutely not. You should be ready. You guys are prepared to ruin this young woman's life. You should be ready. And they went back and forth for some time. And the judge finally says, I am dismissing this case.
Hallelujah.
All right, this case
Lord.
is dismissed. And,
Yes.
I was in shock because I'm prepared to go to jail that day. I'm going to jail.
Oh, it's that
And
dream.
on our way out of that courtroom, the police officers who were the witnesses for the prosecution were coming in the door as we were leaving.
Yeah.
And so I look, and to this day, I know that was God. That was
All
God.
the way.
And He was saying, I'm giving you a chance, girl. I'm giving you a chance to get it together, and you better not let me down.
Wow.
And I didn't, right? And
Wow.
so, but what I'll tell you, because it would, it sounds like it's such a happy ending, right? That's a
Yeah.
happy ending. But I'll promise you that it was not easy. It was
No, I
not
get
easy.
that
And there
part.
were days, there were days when I wanted to go back. There were
I
days,
understand.
the days when I couldn't pay the rent, and the days when the gas was getting cut off, and the days when the electricity was being shut off. There were days that I
Mm,
prayed and said, God, wow, I can't do this.
right.
And raising these babies by myself, and just everything, just the burden, the heaviness of
Mm-hmm.
trying to do what's really fun is to think about the heaviness of trying to do the right thing,
Yes.
because it's easy to do,
It's easy to do the
you
wrong
know,
thing.
it's it's easy to do the wrong thing. But by God's grace, and a lot of pain and a lot of heartache and a lot of just looking at these babies and knowing that I didn't have a choice but to
Mm-hmm.
keep moving forward. Um, I ended up, working a ton of jobs I worked. and just kept pushing forward and believing that there was something better, that I was supposed to be getting something better,
Right.
that I had to do it for these kids. I have four daughters and a son,
Mm-hmm.
and there would be days that I just wanted to quit,
Yeah.
and but I couldn't because I just kept no. These people are dependent on me. These are they don't have anybody else to
Right.
look to. Like I'm it, right? And the reality is, as parents, especially as women, as single moms, single black moms in particular,
Mm-hmm.
that's a heavy load to carry. It's
It
it's
is.
really really heavy to know that you got your own baggage that you dragging along with you, but you also got to drag these babies, and these babies are looking to us to show them something different, right? And that was
Mhm.
just that was the thing that I didn't want. I didn't want my kids to, first of all, I didn't want them to feel like they were a burden.
Right.
I didn't want people to be proven right when they were telling me that my life was over. And, I really, really, for a very long time, felt like I had something to prove to people,
Mm-hmm.
because I was supposed to fail. I was supposed to just be a statistic, a
Right.
black single mother. That's all I was ever supposed to be. Um, but I stumbled into what I call now my passion work. This is
Mm.
my passion work, right? This is so I am the executive director of a nonprofit organization as well,
Uh-huh.
and the organization is a program called Circles Greater Pittsburgh. Circles is a national program. I think you guys are in Georgia, right?
Yeah.
Are
We're
you in Georgia?
yeah, we're in Atlanta.
Yeah, there's a circles program in Georgia as well. I think they're in
Oh,
I can't remember which city they're in, but there is a circles program
so
in
how
Georgia.
did you get to the part of the business? Like, how long did it take you from working all the jobs to saying, you know what, I need to start living on purpose. I need to really go ahead and do something. And you
Yeah.
started a nonprofit. How long was that gap?
So the nonprofit I didn't start. I actually started working for a nonprofit that was teaching people home ownership education, how to be first time home buyers, and teaching
Okay.
financial education. And to be honest with you, I loved the work, but I didn't like the people I was working for. Uh, they were targeting, African American low income communities, but I didn't feel like they had any love for African American low income communities.
Okay.
Um, and the work actually started. I started doing some of the work on the side because I realized that the what needed to be done for people that came from the exact same spaces that I came from, it wasn't happening there.
Right.
People weren't getting what they needed. There was no thought going into what people have been through.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So,
Mm-hmm.
I love financial education, and that is what, that is the core of what I do. But the way that I teach financial education comes from an understanding of how poverty trauma is dictating every single decision that we make, especially our financial decisions.
Come on,
Right.
break it down
So
for us.
if you've been hungry, so here's the thing, food insecurity. If you've gone without food before,
Mm-hmm.
it impacts the way you think about food. It impacts the way you think food should be available to you. So
Mm.
for my example, so after my father left, my mother became a single mom in a city where she didn't know anybody. She was completely and totally alone. And there were days, lots of days, where we went without any food, no food whatsoever. And my mom was not the type that she was going to ask for help. She wasn't going to ask for help
Right.
because she remembered her kids getting taken from her, and she was never going to
Gonna
put
let that
herself in a
happen
situation
again.
where that could happen again. So we would go days without food. And when I started working with people, helping people develop budgets and realizing how much money we waste on food, right? If you think about all of the expenses that you have in your budget, 80% of this country is spending way more money on food than we have to, right? Either ordering out, ordering in, or how we grocery shop.
Yep.
What I found out from trying to understand how I was spending money and using that to help other people is I was becoming a food hoarder. I was hoarding.
So you were buying and buying
I
food
was
because of the
buying,
way.
buying, and buying, and I couldn't figure out why. When my kids were smaller and younger and they were all at home, I could justify that,
Yeah.
right? You can justify having an overabundant food in a house full of kids. But
Right.
when my kids moved out and, got grown and left, and I was still doing it, I knew that there was a problem. And
Mm-hmm.
so, in order to overcome it and trying to analyze it and assess what was going on, I had to go back and really think about what's driving this decision.
Right.
And, this memory of being in the house for 4 days with no food came to me. And I realized that food insecurity is what was driving how I thought about groceries and how I thought about how much food needed to be in my house in order for me to feel safe and secure.
Hmm.
Um, and as I started sharing that story with my clients, um, I realized that I wasn't the only one who had experienced similar things. Right?
Not
There's
at all.
uh,
Yeah.
everybody's trauma is not the same, but a lot of people are carrying trauma and have not made the connection with how it's impacting, their particularly their financial decisions.
Right.
So I started a business called Thompson Real Estate Consulting,
Mm-hmm.
and Thompson Real Estate Consulting was really geared towards helping people become first time home buyers, but not just getting them to the closing table,
Right.
right? It was important for me that we were helping people overcome their trauma so that they stayed in those houses and stayed
Yeah.
operating so that they could maintain it and sustain it and learn how to manage money from a place of acknowledging what their triggers are. What are your triggers that dictate
Right.
your spending habits? And there's so many. There's so
Mhm.
many. If you were a kid like me who only got a pair of shoes once a year, as an adult woman now, shoes is a problem.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
like buying shoes. I like having a lot of shoes. I like having clothes. I got bullied a lot
Mm-hmm.
because my mother couldn't afford to buy us the stuff that everybody else had. So I was always the bummy kid. I never had what everybody else had. And the minute I start making a little bit of money, I was buying
A whole
clothes and
bunch of
shoes and bags,
shoes.
because
Yeah.
it could fill that hole. But what I realized is no amount of buying anything could ever fill those spaces where I felt empty.
Right.
And I eventually turned Thompson Real Estate Consulting turned into T3 Consulting, which included developing curriculum and helping other nonprofits who understand the psychology of poverty and understand how we can't just focus on the financial aspect of poverty. We have to focus on the emotional and psychological impact of poverty in order to really, really help people move forward. And
Absolutely.
then I started working I was consulting with a nonprofit, the Nonprofit Circles, and they offered me a job as the executive director of the organization. And I said no multiple times because I enjoyed consulting. I enjoyed doing my own thing. But our missions, my personal passion and my personal mission were in such alignment with this organization that I finally said yes.
Wow.
Um, and speaking with people around me about poverty, I realized how many people have no clue what people are going through. They have no
Right.
idea how people are being impacted by long-term exposure to poverty and the trauma that comes with that. And then I decided to start producing documentaries
Yay.
because I realized that there's nothing more impactful than storytelling.
Exactly.
And there's something about reading a story versus seeing
Seeing
real
the story.
people
Yep.
and saying, oh, this issue is no longer just this abstract issue. There's real people being impacted by these things. And it
Mm-hmm.
changes the way people think. And so I produced this documentary in 2017 called We Wear the Mask,
Mm-hmm.
The Hidden Face of Poverty, which is literally us following three local women around and them showing what it's like living in poverty and how hard they work to get out, and changing that narrative and that stigma around, this misnomer that people are just lazy and they're not working hard and they don't want it
Right.
bad enough, and it's just not true.
Right.
And so we decided, okay, we need to continue to make these films, and continue to raise awareness and give people a platform to tell their own stories. Because
Exactly.
you know what happens when you don't tell your own story, people will start telling it for you, and they
Mm-hmm.
always seem to mess it up. They
Right.
always seem to mess it up.
Right.
So, so that's really important to me, and I love this business. I love it. I love giving people an opportunity to be heard, and which is why I admire and love what you guys are doing so much, because the storytelling is important.
Exactly.
uh, People have to have an opportunity to get this space to tell their stories, because that's part of the healing process. It's part
Exactly.
of the healing, which is also why I do a ton of public speaking,
Mm-hmm.
and I share my story every chance I get, because not just for the purpose of educating people, but for my own healing process. It's healing for me to pull back the blanket and share with people what I've been through and how it's impacted me. And I just feel like it's a way to motivate and inspire people to not give up. We don't want people to
And
give up.
it tells people, especially with us women, that you're not alone.
That's
You
right.
know, that trauma you experience and what you're going through now, like you said, just because we're here talking and telling the story doesn't mean the journey is over.
That's
You
right.
know, because the higher you go, the more you have to conquer, the more stuff you go through, you know. And so with
Yeah.
our platform, what I tell, the women all the time is that you have to be able to hear another woman's story, to know
Yeah.
that you're not alone, and to also get that encouragement that you need, because she probably have an
Mhm.
answer for you, you know.
That's right.
And the
Yeah. That's,
fantastic thing about it is that you can reach out and touch, because most of the
mhm.
stuff that you have is centered around celebrities and all these people that you just look at, but you don't know the backstory. But when you can
That's
reach
right.
out and touch someone and say, thank you so much, do you have resources, or what are some of the things that you did? Now you're changing a life.
That's right. That's right. And that's what gives me, that made warms my heart. It is literally what I intend to be doing for the remainder of my days. Right.
Exactly.
For the remainder of my days, that is my goal, is to share. And I'm moving around a little bit because I need to plug my computer in before
Oh,
I
no,
die.
that's fine. Uh-huh.
But that's extremely important to me, that we are consistently giving space for women to share and space for women to heal, because
Absolutely.
otherwise we have a bunch of women. We are the mothers of children.
Yeah, exactly.
We are not healed. We are transferring that pain and that trauma onto our children. And then the cycle continues and the cycle continues. And until we get the opportunity to acknowledge that we're hurting, right? Because that's the other
Mhm.
problem,
Right.
particularly Black women. We are expected to be, to take on and take on and take on. And we're supposed to be the super women, and we're not allowed
Superwoman.
to be vulnerable, and we're not
Yep.
allowed to cry. We got to be strong, and you got to fight through. Forget that, right?
Right.
Forget that. We are allowed to be vulnerable. We are
That's right.
allowed to cry. We are allowed to say it's too much. It's
Right.
enough, and to ask for help, and to seek the love and guidance of other women who have been through what we've been through, or who are going through what we're going through, so
Right.
that we can heal. And that is that is something that I didn't think would ever happen for me. I never thought I would heal. I thought
Mm.
this was a pain that I'm supposed to feel every day. I'm supposed to just feel this, and even in some way, maybe I deserve to feel this.
Mm.
And I know that's not true, right? I know that's not true. But there's always, sometimes we carry this little voice inside
Voice
of us
of the head. Yep.
that's lying to us on a regular basis, right?
But we don't want to listen to that voice.
Yeah, she's
Halima,
always
yeah.
around in
Yeah.
the way, wreaking
Yeah.
havoc, uh, which is part of imposter syndrome. So that's one of the things that I struggle with now is now that people say, "Oh, you're so successful," quote unquote. But what they don't know is on the inside, most days I feel exactly like that 22-year-old girl with
Exactly.
those fat, you know, and so that's part of the healing process is starting to realize that I deserve more than I think I do, or I deserve all of the blessings that God bestows upon me. And it's my duty and obligation to acknowledge it, to appreciate it, and then to give it to somebody else.
Halima, the world needs you, man.
Man, we could.
I enjoyed your story and
Thank
anything that we can do to help and support you. Um, I would personally love to do it. I think you would impact so many women's lives. I believe that you will be able to really allow women to see what their trauma is and really, really get them to start healing. And your story alone, it is so captivating and it's such a story that you would want to hear over and over again because you just don't understand how you went from where you were to where you are now with a
you.
whole bunch of strength, with a whole bunch of positivity, and still on the journey. And that's what makes it so fascinating because you're able to admit this is not every day.
Mm-mm.
This is not every day, but today is going to be a good day, though.
That's right. That's right. That's
It's going to
right.
be a good
And just
day. So,
learning to surround ourselves.
yeah, so please tell us how we can find you, Facebook, Instagram, whatever
Yeah.
you got, website,
Well,
everything.
yeah. So on Facebook, I am Halima Tammy Thompson.
Mhm.
And I do have a website. My website is www.tammytthompson.com. I welcome you guys to come on and check it out. If you have questions, if you want to chat, if you want to leave a message, please, please, please do so. I'd be happy to talk anytime and chat with you. And I love getting to know other women and hearing their stories as well. So I just really, really appreciate this platform. I appreciate what you do.
Oh, yes, and
I
we're going to
really,
have
really
you
do.
back. We have so many things going on with our project and everything. I would love to have you back just as a guest to speak to some of our other guests
I'd
who
love to.
struggling with some things, and you can probably, help them out and get them over that hump. So
Love to. Don't be surprised if I show up in Atlanta.
come
We come
on and see me.
see.
I'll be right here waiting on you.
Absolutely.
I'll be right here waiting on you. Thank you so much. I appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Guys,
Thank you.
please take a look at this broadcast, like, share with your friends and everyone. Miss Halima Tammy Thompson gave us so many good nuggets. Her story is amazing. And again, like I said, it's Mental Health Awareness Month. If you are struggling with anything, any type of trauma or anything,
Mhm.
please send us a message. Please reach out to us because we do have some great things for you and some people that we could connect you with so that you can start that healing process. So, Halima, thank you so much for
Absolutely.
being here again.
Thank you. I appreciate you. I love you guys.
All right, I see ya.
Bye.
Bye.